Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Pat Cruz. I want to welcome you to Harlem Stage, and a special welcome to the third in a series of programs of dialogues, groundbreaking with Bill T. Jones. Breaking ground with Bill T. Jones. And it's always groundbreaking, whatever Bill does. So we're so happy to partner with him once again. Tonight's discussion is called Harlem. Cultural representatives from Chase here tonight, but they have been incredible supporters both to Bill T. Jones and to Harlem Stage, so we thank them. I also want to thank the Rockefeller Foundation. This program is also made possible with major support from their New York City Cultural Innovation Fund, and I do believe that Joan Chikakawa is here, who is responsible for so much of that support, so please give Joan a hand as well. Thank you, Joan. We do programs like this in partnership with Bill T. Jones and others as a result of our partnership program, and that is supported by Deutsche Bank and the New York State Council on the Arts. So we have a great deal of foundation for doing this work. We believe in it, and we're happy that you're here to share it with us. I want to remind everybody to please stop all telephones. I've actually been on panels where the people on the panels have their telephones on, and that's usually not a good thing. But if you can turn yours off, that would be wonderful. No recording, no photos, but we do welcome your participation. I also want to let you know that there are mailing lists that have been distributed. If you fill those out and get them back to us before the end of this night's program, and our ushers will be here to collect the capital, naming the future. And I know many of you know the significance of naming things, and Bill will be discussing that with many of the guests who will be here and you will see tonight, and finally with each of you, because you'll be participants in this program as well as audiences for it. I want to thank our sponsors for this, especially Chase, that is the lead sponsor for this program. I don't know if we have any of our reps know who Bill T. Jones is. He's a remarkable dancer, a remarkable choreographer, and a thinker and a provocateur. And I use that in the best sense of that word, because he provokes us to think as well. Please join me in welcoming Bill T. Jones.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for your patience. Every time we do this, it feels like we're reinventing the wheel. It's a lot of fun, and I hope that you will stay in that spirit of generosity. Tonight is our third Breaking Ground. Breaking Ground exists for two reasons. First, to create a forum for ideas and dialogue that might be of interest and use to our city and Harlem in particular. Secondly, as an extension of my work as an artist, interested in as many artists are in the boundary areas between individual artistic creation and the community that artists call home. We at Bill T. Jones Arnie Zane Dance Company want to call Harlem our home. The first Breaking Ground last October asked the question, is Harlem the cultural capital of Black America? If so, what are the characteristics of such a cultural capital? Who are its citizens, and what gives it its identity? The second Breaking Ground this past February attempted to lean in closer for a look at the scene, less from a historical perspective than a clear-eyed view of what and where is Harlem's pulse today. Neither session was conclusive. Some of you were here, obviously, but both were lively and revealing of the passions, old and new, of Harlemites and their friends bringing to this storied district. Tonight, I decided to stretch out my neck a little bit further, running the risk of being a Pollyanna, asking our panel and later you, the audience, to participate in what I hope will be an interesting exercise in imagination, imagining the future. Our panel. The first, my notes, I'm so organized here. Let's see. Sorry about that. Bakari Kitwani, journalist. Journalist, activist, and political analyst whose commentary on politics and youth culture have been seen on the CNN, Fox News, the O'Reilly Factor, C-SPAN, PBS, The Tavis Smiley Show, and heard on NPR. His 2002 book, The Hip Hop Generation, Young Blacks and the Crisis in African American Culture, which focuses on young blacks born after the Civil Rights Movement, has been adopted as a course book in classrooms at over 100 colleges and universities. He is the artist in residence at the Race Center at the University of Chicago. Cleisant Mitchell, Director of Family and Community Outreach for Village Academies, which operates two of the city's top-performing public charter schools, Harlem Village Academy Charter School and Leadership Village Academy Charter School. Cleisant was born and educated in Harlem, raised a family who were fourth-generation public school graduates, and is knowledgeable on charter schools and their impact on public education. Omar Freya, named one of the new school of activists most likely to change New York City by City Limits magazine in 2000, raised in the South Bronx, where he continues to live. He has gained international recognition as an outspoken environmental justice activist who has dedicated himself to seeking solutions to the disproportionate environmental impacts faced by low-income communities of color. He is the founder and director of Green Worker Cooperatives, an organization dedicated to the creation of worker-owned and environmentally friendly businesses in the South Bronx. Beatrice Sibley's. The Sibleys studied economics and political science at Yale and business at the Wharton School. She serves on the board and is an alumna of Sponsors for Educational Opportunity, one of New York City's first mentoring organizations. She is also on a number of other nonprofit and civic boards, including Community Board 10 in Manhattan and Council of Urban Professionals. And very pleased to invite Mr. Vosa Rivers, Chairman, CEO of Vaz Entertainment Group, executive producer, founding member of New Heritage Theater Group, formerly known as Roger Furman Theater, New York City's oldest black not-for-profit theater, and as co-founder, executive producer of Impact Repertory Theater. He is a prominent advocate and activist on Harlem's present arts and culture scene and has been at the forefront of presenting culturally enriching programs throughout New York City, nationally and internationally. Chairman of the Harlem Arts Alliance as well. Thank you all for being here. And who are these folks down front? I think there's information in your program about them, but before we say anything more, I would like to ask them to come forward. They have prepared a program for us tonight, and I hope you enjoy it. You want to come on up? Come on, come on.
I wasn't born Crip, and I wasn't born blood. But when there were no hugs at home, the street showed me love. Frankenstein made a monster. America made TV. So I saw 1,000 murders before I was 3. I wasn't born a liar. I didn't know how to steal, but what your values told me, I need riches to be real. I had Malcolm and Martin, and you shot them down. Try to get a job? You said no with a frown. I went to crowded schools with teachers who were stressed. Tried to go to college and you said that's reserved for the best. I went to play at the center. You said the cost was too high. So I went to the mountain to dream. You let my dream die. Asked for a moment to speak of the pain, and you said, stop acting like a baby. Life's not a game. So I put on my headphones to drown out the screams, and you ran me off the corner for making a scene. I have no present, no future, no hope I can call. Even a mouse will turn vicious with his back towards the wall. I started life with a smile, but now I don't even know. Maybe you could tell me which way I should go. Midnight basketball games in the park? How about a computer near my bed and a mentor with heart? They say the goal worth the struggle is the prize. That's just right. Well, I'm the promise of tomorrow. Am I not worth the fight? I am the village that will grow from a child. I am your future in just a short while. They say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Frankenstein made a monster, but what will you make me?
Hi, I'm Kiara.
I'm sorry?
Hi, I'm Kiara.
I'm Christina.
I'm Aziza.
Ashley. Emily.
Luther.
All right, Luther.
Jasmine. Nicole. Jasmine.
Travis.
Ashley.
Jonathan.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Would you like to hold on to that? Yes. Well, you know, after that dose of reality, I do feel I have to take a deep breath. Do you know the term Pollyanna? A person who would like to see the world through rose-colored glasses. That's not our purpose for being here tonight. I think Luther has laid it down pretty clearly, at least one part of it. So here we are. I've asked this group of people to come and play this game with me. So who are we again? A cultural critic who asks profound questions about the changing nature of social activism. An educator dedicated to solving one of the most vexing questions facing our contemporary society. A practitioner of one of New York's and the modern world's most necessary and often reviled professions, a real estate developer. A self-described environmental justice advocate. And lastly, a skilled and committed cultural worker of great experience. Thank you all for being here. So, since I've been alive, I was born in '52. And after all of the riots, after all the smoke cleared, the assassinations, good liberals always patted themselves on the back or dried their tears by saying, education is the answer. So, Puissant, I hope you will allow me to have you represent education. And as we were discussing downstairs, if you were to play my game, imagining the future, Give us your notion of what that looks like.
The future that I see is that families, not parents, families, and schools will both have the skills and knowledge to work together so that all our kids can succeed. Far too often, there are 3 C's that we don't understand. First one is communication. Communication between the home and school does not go on. Generally, it's the bad phone call. Your child's done this, your child's done that. Nothing positive. The second one is commitment. Many times we may say that we have the same goals, but are we committed? Are we willing to go that extra mile to make that happen? The last and the most important one is collaboration. As principals, as teachers, as parents, as family members, we are not taught to collaborate. We're taught really it's about power. And far too often when we get all 3 groups into a room, it's all about the elephant that's not there. Who has the power? As opposed to collaborating to say, what do we all need to have those kids succeed?
Did you write the poem, sir?
Actually,
Who wrote the poem?
Actually, it was a collaboration of our peers at the time of writing what things that had to do with our issues at the time. So it was pretty much a representative of that age range and what we're dealing with as a whole.
So do you all disown it now, or are you still there? I mean, because you made some strong criticisms about how we're failing you. And I hope that later when we get to that back and forth, I'd like to see you all talk to a man who's made his life being a mentor and making it better for folks like you. But we'll come back to that. Bakari, from your point of view, and I think you are also post-civil rights, right? Yeah, post-civil rights. What do you have? What is your vision? What do you see that you can offer to these folks and all of us?
Well, I think that when you guys invited me to be here, I thought it was an odd place for me to be. But the more I thought about it, I think it kind of does make sense. I think that when we look at what I call the post-civil rights generation, I think one of the most compelling issues has really been a feeling that society has failed young people. With this generation, what people are referring to as the post-hip-hop generation, or what they're also calling the millennial generation, I see us repeating that same mistake, and probably to an even higher degree. In terms of a vision for where we need to be going, I think a couple of things. One, I think that the greatest problems that we're facing, I think the civil rights movement and the Black Power movements have been very successful in bringing and moving the country and the world to a different place. I think that the greatest problem that we continue to face is the problems of every major civilization. We, in the United States at this point, are looked towards being the greatest civilization in the history of the world, the greatest military power, the greatest economic power, and even still, we aren't answering the most important questions of our time. And so when I think about this question of, what's happening in terms of gentrification in Harlem, and larger questions, the larger questions of our time of education, of wealth and poverty, I think that as a society, that's where we need to focus. Are we going to be a society that's going to make a difference? Are we going to be a civilization that's going to be different, and that we answer those questions of what do you do with poverty? Because right now, the solution is just move the poor people out of the way and keep it moving. Move the young people out of the way who don't fit in and keep it moving. Lock them up.
Well, may I just ask you to, okay, we'll phrase it in the positive. Okay, now we live in an ideal world. Let's say 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now.
Right.
What do you want for these guys?
I think that if we have a society that takes those questions very seriously, I think we move closer to a utopia that people feel should exist. Every person who wants to work has a job. Every person who needs a home has one. Every person who needs food has it. I think that these are the basic things that most people aspire to. And I think that this is a society that has the capacity to produce that if the will is matched up to that capacity.
I'm sorry if I'm making you sound like I'm making you.
I think that one of the things that is a part of this project for us at this point in this country is I think we have to begin to take a second look at the vision of the founding fathers of this country. I think a lot of times we hold on to the vision of the founding fathers as though it's just a fixed notion. And I think in many ways we're hundreds of years removed from that time. The world has changed very dramatically. The technology has advanced, and we're in a different place. And I think we need to start to take very seriously our capacity to be a new generation of founding fathers and begin to reevaluate that idea, because I think it's making us very static as a country, and it's reducing our ability to begin to move on the greatest problems of our time. So I think that is one of our immediate concerns. But I think that overall vision that you're asking me is a vision where, as a society, the greatest civilizations ever faced those same problems, and how they answered those problems determined whether they continued or whether they fell by the wayside. And so I think that as a society, we have to take very seriously the ability to answer those problems, and I think to incorporate young people as a part of the solution.
Okay, I'm going to let you go on that right now.
Okay.
But I would like to return to this, because I want you to tell me, what does it look like to include young people?
Okay.
What does it look like? What does it really, is it about the voting age? Is it about everybody having sex education in school, so teenage pregnancies is no longer a problem?
Right.
Is it about, what is it that I'm saying? Because I know what you're saying. We all want it. But I'm looking at you all as a group that says, you're in the trenches.
Right.
Give me some real prescriptions of what you think should happen. I'll come back, though. Because
It's okay. If you want to keep it going, we can keep it going.
No. You've been there. I'm just nudging you.
I've got some more for you.
I'm going to play Tim Russell.
I'll give you one. How about one?
Yeah.
Let's eliminate this mass incarceration system that has over 2 million people in it. We can just start right there. Let's provide jobs for people who want to work. And stop saying that people don't want to work.
What do we substitute the incarceration system with? As people, as there's more of us,
right.
There are more transgressions, because we live in a very individualistic culture that teaches me first. What about the whole issue? What was it Obama was talking the other day, talking to black fathers about?
Right.
So I mean, that's probably bigger than we can. But how do we back up and change behavior? You know what I'm getting at. So not unless I take up all the air in the room, I think that we should actually take a stab at least even one of those questions. Because the cycle that ends with people ending up in jail doesn't just start with a young man holding somebody up in a grocery store. It goes all the way back, and we're trying to imagine a world where those problems are gone. And it would be nice if we could actually take a stab on getting there tonight. Omar, you're active in the South Bronx, and I assume that this question of the future is very much with you. What part of the vision do you think that we here in Harlem might benefit from? And we talked about some of the terminology in your bio. Could you bring us up to speed about things like environmental racism and so on? What do you have to say about that?
Which question you want me to answer first?
Go for it. How do you feel comfortable?
Well, I'll go with the vision one.
All right.
That's my favorite.
Yeah.
I envision a time and a place, certainly here in the South Bronx, the same case, where we are able to engage in practices that sustain life, and that we own ourselves, we own our community, and we're in complete control of the things that happen around us. And what that means and what that looks like, I can imagine and would ask everybody here, imagine if most of us here, ourselves and most of the people that we know, were working in places that they owned. Not just individually like one owner, but owning, everyone together in the workplace, together owning that business. So most of us are workers and owners at the same time. And what effect that would have in our communities, and on our schools, where now we're in positions where our workplaces are demanding that we communicate with each other, that we learn how to compromise and how to have conversations without being passive aggressive, without being, blowing up in somebody or punching walls, and what effect that would have on schools that now are trying to create people who are able to have conversations and who feel empowered instead of operating the way that most schools do now, which is to create employees. What effect that would have on relationships where men are now able to communicate with women instead of punching walls and storming out of rooms. And what effect that would have on our communities now, where those of us who are engaged in trying to improve environmental conditions, and trying to stop the pattern of environmental racism, which is where all of the things that nobody else wants, the bus depots, the power plants, the waste facilities, all of those wind up getting shafted into our communities, into the places that are least able to fight them off. Now we've got communities that are able to fight those facilities off, but at the same time, we've gotten in the practice of building our own plans and devising our own desires for our communities, because we've been in the habit of doing that at work or at school, that we don't have to fear getting kicked out of our community after we fight off some facility that nobody wants. And that's kind of a catch-22 of a lot of environmental justice work in our communities, is that we wind up fixing our community so well that we can't even afford to live there anymore. So, but all of those things coming out of a very real, very practical day-to-day change, which a few years ago I had started an organization, Green Worker Cooperatives, to do just that, to try to create businesses that are owned by the people who work there, all of them from the South Bronx, that are actually able to improve environmental conditions, and by doing that, try to create a different kind of a culture.
You gave me an example downstairs now about, what was it, recyclable
Yes.
building materials?
Yes.
Well, just talk us through that. I mean, what was that?
We just launched our very first, it's called a worker cooperative. That's a business that's owned by the people, everyone who works there. So we just launched our first worker cooperative a few months ago. It's called Rebuilder Source. It's located in the South Bronx by 145th Street, just across the river. And it is a home improvement store for used and surplus building materials. So all the sinks and the doors and the hardwood floors and the kitchen cabinets, stuff that people go to Home Depot or Lowe's to buy. So we decided to set that up as a way to show that there's an alternative to all these waste facilities that wind up getting thrown into our communities, and create jobs, empowering jobs for people in our community at the same time.
Poor people, underprivileged people, what have you, they're interested in used things?
I care about saving money. And I think most people who don't have, unlimited amounts of dollars care about saving money. And that is the case for everybody who's walked through our doors, and the people that we tell about it, we tell. It is something that people come and they realize that it's great because they can pay, half of what they would have paid if they'd gone to Home Depot. But at the same time, and there's a myth too that working class people and poor people, particularly people of color, who are those things, don't care about the environment. And people come into the store all the time who say, this is great that this is here. One, because I'm saving money. But then you got plenty of people who come in who say that they want to keep coming here because they know that this is from the community. It's, for us and by us, and people love seeing that, and also knowing that this is something that's actually improving the environment. So those are things that plenty of people.
Old school values, grandma and grandpa values. And
what would that be? Could you help me?
Well, Travis, what is one of our credos?
Our credo is, we are youth activists who view the
Louder so they can hear you.
We are youth activists who view the creative arts and leadership training as a way to develop ourselves and change the world in a positive way. We believe that we must be the message that we bring through hard work, focus, discipline, unity, and the principles of SOS. Safe space, outstanding effort, and service to our family-friendly community.
One more time, SOS?
Safe space, outstanding effort, and service to our family-friendly community.
Okay. So, these are the values. These are old school values. These are the values that our grandparents taught us. These are the values 10 years ago, Jamal, Joseph, and I decided to pass on to our young folks. When we started Impact, the youngest person was 6 years old. We envisioned changing, and they are not here because they are better to be better performers. They are our young ambassadors. So what we are doing is we're using the arts to make a change. Arthur Mitchell is out here. Arthur has done the same thing. There's so many of us. You know, during the civil rights and post-civil rights have understood the importance of making the community that we grew up in better. But it was better, and it was better when we were younger. And there were values that were passed on to us that meant that if someone was coming down the street and they lived on our block, we said good morning, good evening, good afternoon. There was that level of respect. We didn't have to know them. We need to bring those kinds of behavior patterns back to our community.
And culture can do that.
Culture clearly can do that. Show me how culture does that. Teaches me to be more polite, more civil. How does culture do that? I think that when my grandparents migrated from the South and from the West Indies and came here, they were able to bring their culture with them and to replant themselves into this community. This community became a magnet with different people all coming and living together. There was a certain kind of understanding and commitment. Sometimes it wasn't spoken, it was just done. We knew instinctively, I guess it might be in our DNA, but it was really about respect. And so it is something that I think that we started getting away from it within our school system, getting away with parents who are young and not having a sense of responsibility, kids having kids, and trying to go back to a place and time where we really understood what our role was in making this community a better place.
Now let's adjust for a moment, because I think I am a performer. I make art. I make things for people to see. I'm assuming, someone has said that culture is the meeting of nature and art. That's culture, nature and art. So I think what you're saying, I'm not quite sure if we're using the same words to say culture. You know, because those of us who work in the schools and all, we know we're out there trying to show people the discipline of dance. Singing, for all these. You're saying that by me being a better audience for, I don't know if that's what you're saying, dance, this is what I would say, I'm going to be a more thoughtful person, I'm going to look, I'm going to make more room for other people's experience. Is that what you mean by culture changing?
Culture allows us, if we use it correctly, to be respectful of each other, to have a certain amount of tolerance so that we can understand each other. It's not only about what we do, it's about how we listen. And that becomes an important tool. And some of us, through demonstration of our actions, show it. It's not something that I say, I go out and I try and beat it into someone's head that this is how you should act. It is being in an environment that encourages that kind of exchange. I believe that for us and in our family, and we have now over 400 young people going through our program, Jamal and I, you know, we were called irrational cultural activists. Everyone told us that we could not do what we wanted to do because there was no funding to take young people and pass on your legacy, pass on these values that you hold so deeply. but we didn't listen. We knew that it was an important place to be. We knew that we stood here on the shoulders of so many others, great people who lived in this community, and they all came from different places. They all weren't educators. They were laborers. They were teachers. They were all...
Now, we have no argument there, but I'm saying once upon a time, old school values, everything that you're describing, your church used to do that.
Yes.
So, now how does having a modern dance company, a ballet company, a symphony orchestra, how does that do it? Or let me put it another way. A few years ago, I was on a panel downtown, and Chuck Close was, I think, one of the organizers. There was a man from Harlem who was there, and everyone was talking about culture in the schools and culture, we need more culture. And he said, well, you know, we got culture, we got the radio. You know, we listen to the radio, we got television. He was saying we have culture. Today, New York Times, Lil Wayne's new CD, a bona fide hit, right? Now that's culture. Now, how does Lil Wayne selling, what was it, 450, how many? Oh, it's about he outsold Usher at 450,000. And he goes, how does that, now that's culture, right? You agree it's culture? How does Lil Wayne selling 450,000 records make me a more civil person?
Maybe, again, there is an exaggeration on that word when we look at pop culture.
I'm sorry?
There is an exaggeration or an interpretation of what pop culture is. And I think that there are various levels. It really depends on who is delivering the message about culture. You go into our institutions, there is a certain standard, there's a certain expectation that parents expect when they drop their kids off and leave them in our institutions. And it goes from the leadership. From the moment that you walk into a space, especially in our institutions, a lot of us create what we call safe spaces. It's different from the culture that our young people have at home. A lot of times, they would rather be with us. It's hard for them to leave us after 8 hours on a Saturday because of what we provide. And it's a safe environment, it's a respectful environment, and I always say it goes back to old school values. And that's what I see happening. I think that there are enclaves of this. We need to connect the dots, and we need to do more of it. The Harlem Arts Alliance is a perfect example. I look at the history of this community. The history of this community, again, early 1900s, we all came from different places. We decided to settle here. When we came here, the educators and the laborers decided that they would work together. There were enclaves where people would all gather. Somewhere in the 60s and 70s, we were more concerned, especially the cultural institutions, about keeping our institutions alive more so than working together.
Could you give me an example of what you consider a cultural institution?
Dance Theater of Harlem, cultural institution. I run New Heritage Theater Group, founded in 1964. I'm a founding member. Prior to, so I want to give you a perfect example of how you follow this. 1940, library, a library on 135th Street, there was a company called the American Negro Theater. Young members of that group included Ossie Davis, Sidney Poitier, Harry Belafonte, Ruby Dee, Ossie Davis, etc. They were all young people. Fred O'Neill and Abe Hill founded that group. And what they wanted to do with this small theater company, not thinking about being big stars, that wasn't it, to learn all aspects of promoting their culture through the arts. Each of those actors were trained in all aspects of the arts. My mentor, Roger Furman, was also a member of that company. That company only lasted for 10 years. But look at the graduates of that program. 1964, Roger Furman, after the death of some of our civil rights leaders, decided that he wanted to go back to that period in 1940 that lasted from 1940 to 1950 and replicate that model. I was one of those who said, this is beautiful, I want to be a part of that. And so, again, what we have done is, so we're an institution, we have stood the test of time. When we think about our critical cultural periods, the Black Power movement, the Renaissance of the first Renaissance in Harlem. They were only decades, maybe two. We're already 45 years old, so we have really stood. A lot of our organizations that came out of the 60s, we're still standing. And we're standing not with a model of sustainability. We thrive in another way. People always say, oh, you can't be a cultural institution unless you can sustain yourself. But there are many definitions on what sustaining is. And I don't want to get caught up with sustaining as much as I want to say we survive and we thrive in the midst of all sorts of challenges.
Yeah, okay, and I appreciate that. Hopefully if I can't do it, someone else would pick me up on this, because in no way, I'm a big booster for culture, but I think it's very useful to focus the question, because you made a distinction between pop culture and this other culture, and I found that a curious diversion, since quite frankly, I think the language that connects many, many people of culture is pop culture and its values. So that is something we should probably return to. Beatrice Sibley, we're all here concerned with ideas, ideals, and realities, but as a developer, could we argue that your point of view is literally rooted in bricks and mortar? What would you wish for the future?
I was actually sitting here taking notes. This is a fascinating conversation. I was born in Jamaica in 1968. And my hope for the future is something that's kind of been very present with me in this year, 2008, because I was born in perhaps one of the most distinctive years in America's history. I think, if I recall correctly, that's the year a couple amazing leaders were assassinated. And I've always wondered, what was the year of my birth like? Like, what would it have been to be alive in 1968? And to me, 2008 is beginning to feel to me of importance the way that 1968 felt. I'm beginning to feel that when this year is over, we will look to 2008 and around this time the same way, and how America and our lives change from this point on, in the same way that, unfortunately, to the negative of the African American community, our world changed a bit after we lost King. So when I grew up in Jamaica, there was an artist by the name of Bob Marley. And I was always fascinated by Bob Marley because he would do interviews, and he would never make any sense in his interviews. And then you would listen to his music, and it would blow you away. And as I was sitting here today, I was thinking, Bob Marley, I don't know if I have it right, came to me and it said, if you don't know where you come from, you won't know where you're going to. And so this year, I took a vacation, and people thought I was weird. I took a train to Savannah with my partner, and he was confused as to why we were taking a train also, why didn't we fly? But I actually wanted the feeling of taking the time to go south, to feel the distance of what it was like to be an American, to reverse that trip. A lot of us here in Harlem came from the South. Reversing that trip and going from New York in a train, going south the way they came north. And I went to Savannah, and most of our time there we spent doing historical tours, and we went to the first black church in America, where, for the young people who don't know, a promise was made at the end of slavery to give every black family 40 acres and a mule. And I went to the place where that promise was made and where that promise was not kept. And so it's a longer conversation. My wish is that I would think in Impact Theater, how many of you know the history of America? How many of you know the history of slavery? You know, we watch Roots and we understand the pain of slavery. How many of you know the business of slavery? How many of you understand that we came to this country as property? And there were property rights that were held in us. And it was amazing to go and see these houses and see that, you know, we were residing above the horses. You'd have the carriage house for the horses, and the slaves lived above the horses. We were property just like the horses. And so that is why I'm a real estate developer, because I believe essentially in understanding and being very knowledgeable about our property rights. We came to this country as property rights. And so now, as a community, what are our property rights? Do we understand the wealth? If you research the wealthy families of this country, they all were slave owners. When Savannah was formed, it was formed to be free of slaves. The profit motive was so high that they eventually adopted slavery. Do we understand that? Do we know the wealth that we as a community have created for this country? King Cotton built America. The only people that could survive those conditions were slaves.
So Beatrice, how does your vision of development rectify or balance that historical truth?
I think that, thank you for that question. I think that, and I was fascinated by the discussion about culture. What I see culture as is, you know, like you have a bathtub, right? And you keep throwing things in the bathtub. And over time, the bathtub, you know, might get murky or whatever. Culture is the repository of everything that has been thrown into the bathtub of who we are as a people. And so when you look at our culture, you are looking at our living history. The way we walk, the way we talk, the way we think, the way we treat each other. Every part of who we are as our culture has a historical root. So I don't look at a distinction between pop culture, high culture. The culture expresses who we are, and as Bob Marley did, the culture is a mirror to get us to look back at from where we came.
And development?
Development is taking ownership of that process, which is, you could just be carried along by your history, or you could literally build from your history. You can't build in space. You have to build from where you are coming from. And the reason I'm a developer is I build. But to build, I have to know where I'm sitting. I have to know what I'm standing on. I have to know what my foundation is, or my building will not stand. And so for people to build, they have to know their history and from what are you standing on? Why is our families as we are? Why are relationships between men and women as we are?
So you feel that in your vision in the future, when more and more people of color empowered by doing what New York has been doing since it was founded, fighting over real estate, that we will have somehow or other had a greater sense of identity and place, and things will just be better if we are enfranchised in that activity. Is that
my future is a society where every person sitting in that front row fully understands their rights. We have a situation where we have an election, and we're talking about Mississippi, where 40% of Mississippi is black, but 25% of the vote is black. A lot of young people here, your family members don't vote.
So you think that owning property, owning houses, owning buildings raises the consciousness of political consciousness?
I think that there are many rights that we have, many property rights. Buildings is one manifestation. Intellectual property is one manifestation. So in my vision of the future, we all understand it. And owning your real estate, as we face gentrification and displacement in Harlem, if you do not own where you live, you stand to lose it.
Well, I thank you for that. Could we ask the Impact folks to come back? You had one more thing you wanted to do for us? And then we'd like to open up this discussion to everyone else. Please.
What is Impact? It's not a game. What is Impact? It's not a game. How come it's not a game? Because what we do now matters forever. And how long is forever? Forever and ever and ever. I stands for inspiration. M. Motivation. P. Preparation. A. Activism. C. Commitment. T. Teamwork. The August Rush, the song that these young people performed at the Oscars. Praise up. No father figure in the house, and I'm wondering how I'm gonna work it out. Oh, my friends keep on telling me how I don't need a man, but they don't really understand. There's far too many pressures in reality. We're dealing with the pain, just the poverty. And I gotta be myself because there's nobody else for me, no. Hanging there with me. Sometimes it takes a different kind of love to raise a child. So don't give up. Don't give up. Let's just come down. Sometimes it takes a different kind of dream to make you smile. So raise it up. Hanging there with me. Sometimes you need another helping hand to show the way. So don't give up. Don't give up. Let's just come down. Sometimes it's impossible, and that's why we pray. So raise it up.
It seems to be nothing left for me. Mama's gone, daddy didn't wanna be. And now I'm all by myself, wondering where is love? Should I just give up? You know.
See, life falls down on me, cuts into my soul. But I know I got the strength to make it through it all. Cause I'm still standing tall, breaking through these walls. I'm gonna give my all, you know.
Feeling like the motherless child. Pain cuts into my soul. It's beating me down. Can't find a smile on the face of a motherless child. Now we go, gotta get my own.
Sometimes it takes a different kind of love to raise a child.
say after that, huh? We've said a lot of things. A lot of wonderful things have been said here. Where do you want to take this discussion trying to imagine the future? Is it a discussion? Where do you want to take this game? What's on your mind? Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
Okay. First we ask that all you do is you stand up, you say where you are, who you are, where you come from, and make your statement.
All right. My name is Emily. Hey, everybody. My name is Emily. I was born in Uganda. I came here when I was 2 years old, and I grew up in Harlem. And I think I'm 20 years old, and I think now is a really weird time for us as young people because it's kind of hard to define what this generation is at this point. And because of a lot of us having kids of our own, because of other circumstances, the lines are really blurred, and I think it makes it harder for people to help out the younger generation because they're not sure what it is and what we need. So I think that a couple of things that are important for people to remember is that there is money out there, but the money that's really needed is not being funneled to where it needs to go. So we've lost a lot of arts programs, and we've lost a lot of, the people who have had children have lost a lot of services that they need to be able to get checkups and to go to the doctor and the dentist. And you gotta remember, us growing up, it's not common in where we come from to go to the doctor when we need it, to get checkups all the time, to, you know, there's no steady, there's no steady foundation for us really. So I think that the bridge between junior high school and high school before going out into the real world, I think that's a really important place to focus on with high school education and with the services provided to high school students, because you got to understand that every year you have a group of people that are graduating into the real world. Now every year, a big group of that people drop out of school, so then you have a whole bunch of people out in the community not doing anything. A whole bunch of those group of people come from low income and need a job, and they're not instructed on how to find a job. They may not have the skills for that job, and nobody's back in the high school showing them what they need because there's no funding.
Now, okay, good. Can I ask you just quickly, as I've been trying to do with my colleagues here, put it in terms of this is what I see, this is what I want.
All right, I think that more money should be put into high schools to make sure that the dropout rate can decrease by,
So money's gonna make the dropout rate decrease.
Money and putting more thought into services that we need. For health services, a lot of the schools don't have the proper materials that they need.
I want the schools to have the proper materials. Yes. And what are the proper materials?
They need job readiness programs and college prep. And they need college prep not in their junior year. We need college prep when we come in, so that we're already conditioned about it, you know? And,
what else you want?
More programs like Impact, where you're taking things, it doesn't always have to be the arts. Like, I know there's a lot of kids out there who may not like singing or dancing, but they're into sports, or they're into culinary arts, or they're into becoming a small business owner, and they have nobody that's going to be like, hey, why don't you come intern right here for a little bit, and then, you know, when you graduate, we'll give you a job. Like, there's nothing, you know, stuff like that.
All right, yeah. Yeah, jump back in.
I mean, this is interesting, and I think a lot of things were said that I wanted to respond to. I think that, you know, as I listen to the other panelists and even, you know, watching the young people and listening to your comments, I think that what's happening with this country is an international embarrassment. And I think that we spend $500 billion for a war that nobody wanted, except for a handful of people, and we don't put these resources where they belong. It's not as though we don't know what the answers are. We know the program like Impact that we see working. We see these programs working around the country. Your school, I'm sure, is probably effective. We see the programs working. It is not a national commitment to putting the resources where they belong. And I think that we talk around these questions, and we act as though the work that we're doing isn't effective or that we haven't found the answers. We have found the answers, but we do not have a national commitment to seeing these young people grow up into the people that they should be and to making this country work. And I think that we need to move people in that direction. I think the back and forth things you guys are having here is you're defining culture in two different ways. And I think that it's interesting because I think that he's saying what you're saying. I mean, I think that I think she answered it. She gave you the second half of the cultural question, right? But I think you're talking about culture in terms of the arts. And I think that he's talking about culture in terms of lifestyle, behavior, values of a people, which is what Beatrice was saying. And I think that we're doing both. In terms of the pop culture question, you raised a really interesting point that I want to kind of build up. And you said development is when you build from your history. And that is what you're standing on. And I think that when we're talking about the Lil Wayne issue, I think that's what hip-hop has done that. Hip-hop has built from a history of what was given to young people in our time. And that is a history of globalization, it's a history of joblessness, it's a history of a rising underground economy as a result of those things. It's a history of a rising incarceration rate. And I think that young people have built hip-hop out of that reality, and so it reflects that. But I think that there's still development within that, and there's still culture within it. It may not be the old school values that we want to see, but I think that until, as a society, we move people into jobs who want to work, we get young people out of these prisons, we provide funding in these educational institutions to build these young people, we're going to see this Who's the we? I think that as a society, we have to move the country in that direction. Because I don't think...
Is this the we?
I think we are the we. We're a part of the we.
Mm-hmm. So we got to do...
We got to get these clowns out of office who aren't doing their job. That's one of the things we got to do.
I got to jump in for something real quick. Two things. First of all, I'm a child of the 60s. 1965, I graduated music and art right across the street, then I was at City College. And let me tell you, first of all, as a nation, we haven't come together to decide what we want with our educational system. But there are those people within the educational system that are making the stride. You mentioned preparing for college when you get into high school. Our kids at our school are preparing when they come into 5th grade. The parents and the children are told, you are preparing to graduate college. Graduate college. Getting into college is not good enough. Too many of our kids get in, realize or feel that they don't belong, and drop out. And I'm talking about college, not high school, college. Our 8th graders just got back from 3 days in Washington, Howard University. The week before, our 7th graders spent 2 days down in Philadelphia at Temple University. Our 5th graders went out to Williams. And then our 6th graders were at Stony Brook, historically black college, State University. They get to see the world, they get to understand that they belong there when they're in 5th grade. Not when they're in high school, in 5th grade. Every one of my classes is named after a university. You're not in class 204, you're in Missouri. So even when you're late, I say, okay, John, what's your advisor? I'm in Missouri. So even when they're late, they're thinking about it, they're in college. That's what we have to do. There are programs, there are things that we can do now, but we have to come together as a group. One of the things from the 60s, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. That's what we have to understand. If we don't work together, it's not going to happen.
And it is about the money.
No, it's not about the money. It's not about the money. I have seen schools succeed when there was no money. I have seen dance programs succeed when it was off in the streets. It's about the commitment of the people that want to get it done.
Mm-hmm. Okay, the hands jumped up. Okay, yes, please. What's our rule? We just take the mic and we say, you got a mic there? Here we are. Here we go.
And because we have young people, why don't you tell them your age?
Hello, I'm Aziza. I'm 15 years old, and I'm currently finishing my 9th grade year in high school, meaning I'm a freshman. Now, I go to a Catholic private all-girls school, Aquinas High School, in the Bronx, 182nd in Belmont. And there they have a lot of extracurricular activities. There's not one girl there that is not in a Regents class. You come in 9th grade, You're in Algebra 2, Biology 1, you take the Algebra Regents and Biology Regents in June. 10th grade, you take your global. But there they have, you know, volleyball, softball, dance, glee club. They have bills club I can't even think of right now. And even though I know public schools, and I ask my friends to go to public schools, what do you have? What do you say? What team are you on? Oh, I got the basketball, I got the football, I got the dance and stuff. But then, you know, slowly at a time, yes, schools, things have succeeded with no money. But you can't take everything together from the ground with no money. You're actually going to need a little bit of profit to start something, because if you go and say, I want to start a modern dance school team in the South Bronx High School, they're going to look at you, okay, South Bronx High School, you have any money? No. You need funding, you need raising. It's stuff like that where sometimes you don't need money, sometimes you do. In fact, Repertory Theater, I've been here since I was 8 years old, so I've been here for 7 years. Now, from what they've told, well, from what I've learned, it's a number of founders, Jamal Joseph, Rosa Reardon, Alison Arlen, a number of founders, Raymond Johnson. And they work together in 1997 to put this together and everything. So yes, we have young people that are successful and everything, but I think we need to take the time out to think. A lot of adults here, they tell us, oh, you don't need this, you need this. Don't think, don't speak, just learn and listen. Just think, just learn and pick it up and you'll be fine. Where sometimes that's the case and sometimes it's not. Sometimes you do have to turn to the young people, what do you want? Do you want this? Okay, now think about this. See, I'm the type of person, when I go to make a decision sometimes, I think things through. Like, if I do this or this will happen. If that happens, that or that will happen. Some people need to learn how to think things through and take their time instead of rushing into stuff. That's what I think.
Right, okay. All right. Yes. Sir. You need the microphone, sir.
First of all, thank you very much for this.
Would you stand up, please, and just tell us who you are? Yes, please.
Hi, my name is George, and I've been very fascinated by this conversation, and thank you very much for holding it. As you were speaking, I do agree with the gentleman, the gentleman was speaking about the schools. It's so critical that we invest in more schools. It seems like such a no-brainer to create these schools and create. I would like to see a more intimate relationship develop between schools and libraries and high-tech libraries, and create them as community hubs, and using whatever media possible to create cultural products that will create interior dialogues with children, with young people like who we see up there. When you do those kind of programs and you see young people performing in that way, you understand that a process is beginning that can be lifelong. It's a lifelong learning process. It's critical for any developing community. And you can reclaim history, you can revise history. You can go back to the Harlem Renaissance, you can see it anew. You can see that it was a strategy. Right now I'm sitting with Bill and Louise Greaves, and they've created documentaries that have changed my life. They've created documentaries about Ida B. Wells and Ralph Bunche that have illuminated me and enlightened me, and it sensitizes you to things. So I might see a documentary here, I might read a book here, and I might come across a passage or an essay by Manny Marable, and what does culture do but help you make these connections? So Manny Marable might say, well, if this is the system, and if education is failing our children, when our children graduate and they're unprepared, they're desperate, they make choices, bad choices. When they make the bad choice, they're in jail. When they're in jail, they lose the power to vote. And all of a sudden, things get a little bit clearer. So I encourage the creation of culture, obviously, and organizations that are supporting that, but I definitely believe that it begins with creating for ourselves very vibrant educational environments like the Harlem Children's Zone, like your school, etc., to combat this war.
Here's a gentleman right behind you there.
Thank you. Michael Lofton. I've spent several years in the Harlem community as a supplemental education, and I applaud this conversation, and you're having this conversation. I think that you have to talk about, when you talk about the future of Harlem, you have to talk about young people, the youth, because you can look at how many young people there are in Harlem. You also have to talk about how the schools are failing our kids. When you think about a graduation rate of something like 50%, we have to start talking about the wholesale revamping of the education system.
Well, Michael, isn't it true that's the great shame? Now, how many education commissioners have we been through in the last 10 years?
It is because we make schools to suit teachers and school systems rather than to suit students. And this is what these students are telling you. Ask them what they need. The schools have to be student-centered, not teacher-centered. And because they are not serving the kids, we cannot have this one-shoe-fits-all system of education. There have to be many different types of schools to fit many different types of learners. And no one is saying this. No one is saying that we have to have a whole array of types of schools. Not every kid is going to go to college.
And I appreciate that, but just for a moment, let's read. I put on your show. Any other educators in the room? So is he right? Where's somebody says no, you're not right. Okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to know that he's not right, but first, my name is Raymond Johnson. I'm Artistic Director of Impact Repertory Theater. My daughter actually goes to Dance Theater Harlem, and I'm also a graduate of music and art, so I'm really connected to this stuff right now. Not that nobody's saying this. I think it is being addressed. I work for an organization called New Vision for Public Schools. And this is an organization, the largest organization that's dedicated to changing public school system in New York City. We created a lot of small schools and creating a number of schools with different themes so that students can go to a school where their interests are, where their interests lie. Technology, nursing, the arts, or whatever it may be. So I believe that there are attempts and strides to actually create schools where young people can go to and say, hey, this is a place where I want to learn, where I want to understand things. He said it starts in 5th grade. It's starting in 5th grade. I agree with that. We should start, my daughter says, Daddy, I want to be a fashion designer. I said, great, we're going to go visit FIT. She's 8 years old, but we're going to go visit FIT. All right, and we're going to go see it. But I want to go back to 9th grade. 9th grade is extremely critical. There are studies out of Chicago that say 9th grade attendance is 6 times greater a predictor of high school graduation than 8th grade test scores. Okay? In 2003, you had 59,000 students enter the public school system in the 9th grade. 16,000 of them were retained in the 9th grade and did not graduate. The largest number of students that did not graduate in that 4 years were retained in the 9th grade. 9th grade is an extremely important and pivotal year in the education of our young people. Yes, if we prepare them correctly up until that point, they should do well. But I want to just emphasize the criticality of 9th grade. And yes, there are people out there trying to create schools and environments and situations where every young person has an opportunity to learn in a system that's conducive to their learning style. So it is happening. It may not be as widespread as we like, but it is happening.
Yes, was there somebody, another person? Yes, sir. We'll come back down to you guys, but then they're all responding to you now. You see that, right? Yeah.
Well,
who are you, sir?
My name is Eugene Nesmith, and I'm a professor here at City College. And I don't want to sound Pollyannish, but
why not?
What I'm going to say is probably going to sound rather cynical, because I think, and since we're on the education track here, and trying to make a connection between education, culture, and family, I think we all really kind of know what the answer is. And in terms of a vision for the future here, we have deep-seated problems in America and in the world. And those problems, we keep thinking that some educational system is going to solve those problems. And those problems aren't going to be solved by any kind of educational system. I would submit to you that in all my years of teaching, what I have learned from working with students is that the students who have learned discipline before they come to the table, they will survive. Those who have not learned discipline and think that it's going to be some kind of easy process, that it's going to be an easy ride, and they can do it at their choosing, they will suffer the consequences. And I will also submit to you that that discipline has to be learned at home. You can instill some of that discipline in the educational process, but your parents cannot give you something that they don't have. And if we have learned anything in this country, one can pull oneself up by one's bootstrap. I was raised in South Carolina. I don't know if you've ever heard of Clarendon County, but in the Brown versus the Board of Education cases, of the 5 cases, the very first one was from Clarendon County. My parents did not finish high school, but the thing that they did teach me was discipline. I graduated from City College here with my bachelor's and went on. What is most disheartening to me today is many of the students that I see coming to City College, they are just not prepared to be here. They just don't know the opportunity that they have. As I travel around this country and I see students who don't have the opportunities that the students here have, and they're not even awake. Many of us can take advantage of it.
Because I think it's very provocative what you're saying, and it's getting very late. Is there anybody from our panel that wants to jump in there?
Sure. I'd like to respond to that because I share 2 of your points that you mentioned, which is the focus on discipline and the focus on history. And why do I focus on history? Which is we are sitting in a gap. We are sitting in a gap where the parents of the current children are damaged. Right, that's the history, that we have a damaged generation that's parenting the current generation. And this is, when I talk about Bob Marley, so much of who I am and my values come from his words. I know so many of his songs by heart because he was in many ways my cultural parent. And I think the opportunity that culture provides is culture can step into that gap. Culture can step into that gap and say, this is where you were, this is the damage that happened, now you have a choice. And that is the difference between, I would say, high culture and low culture. Low culture purely mirrors the damage. It just shows the misogyny, whatever, because that's what our young people are experiencing. High culture takes it to a spiritual level and says, who can we be?
Now that's a provocative word.
Each generation has its own pop culture.
That's true. No, hold on. There was somebody else. Yes, sir.
Jump in here, too.
You got a microphone here?
I want to jump in here.
I bet you do. Yes.
Hi, my name is Jamal Joseph, and I do want to say to Sister Beatrice that, 1968 was a hell of a year. I was fortunate enough to be alive and active in 1968. I was 15 years old, and it is the year that, right here in Harlem, that I joined the Black Panther Party. And as a result of that decision, it put in motion life experiences that bring me back here, being involved in the Panther, part of the Panther 21 case, spending 9.5 years in prison, coming and finding a cultural voice in prison, starting a theater company, and then saying that I wanted to do social activism through theater,
in leading me on the course where I can stand here tonight. I'm a professor at Columbia University and chair of the graduate film program and one of the founders of Impact. But I want to go back to 68. I want to just very quickly just talk about, if we can talk about education, politics, activism, culture, and bricks and mortar, just in one quick example. In 68 in Harlem, when you would walk down the street, there would be, as you could imagine, drug dealers on the corner, and we always talk about Harlem in terms of there being a church and liquor store in every corner, but also in every corner was an activist that was ready to snatch you. We're storefront schools. Those of us that grew up in Harlem remember Harlem Prep, remember all the Hall You Act. They were storefront schools where teachers were ready to snatch you off the corner into, they were dance schools. How many people here who grew up in Harlem got their first dance lesson in a storefront? Got their first really prep for high school in a storefront? Got their first music lessons in a storefront or in church basements? So these institutions, when we talk about culture, understood that they needed to be on the front line. Now, when a politician wants to get votes, when Giuliani wanted to seal his kind of legacy, he had quality of life crimes and Operation Pressure Points. So we're able to pour police and money on the streets to stomp out what's perceived as a threat so people can get votes. We're able to go halfway around the world, as somebody mentioned earlier, and stomp out these imaginary threats to our safety. How can we cannot make an aggressive grassroots, let's go back to grassroots organizing, storefront, block by block assault on what is an alarming epidemic that we, at this very moment, have more young black and Latino men in prison than in colleges.
No, those people who started those storefronts, yes. Are they getting government money to do it?
No, this is what I'm saying. Some were getting government money, some were doing grassroots funding. So here's where the money does come in. If we say that we're going to, as artists and as educators, open these institutions up, if we build these buildings and get people to think that, yes, let's put a restaurant here, yes, let's put this here, but let's put some kind of storefront cultural institution so that we're changing the models of schools. Remember, we said we want to change the models to meet the people at the point of their will and at the point of their need, so that every place. The reason Impact, people ask, how do you recruit for Impact? Do you advertise? Do you do backstage? We stopped doing backstage 5 years ago. We perform 75 shows a year. Kids come out and then they find out this is a grassroots arts and education. How many Impact members here are in college or going to college? And for the members that left, we emphasize that. One of the first things we ask them, are you interested in music, dance, and drama? And by the way, what college are you going to? I'm only 13. I don't care. Answer that question. Because we understand that culture is many, many things, but it's also a weapon. And the last thing I just want to say, from 1968, Huey P. Newton used to talk about power. And I want to talk about culture in this way. Power and culture is the ability to define phenomenon and make it behave in a desired manner. We have everything that we need between who's sitting here, here, and here to define this phenomenon and to make it behave in a desired manner.
All right, thank you for that.
Well, I want to make a comment here. I take no issue with anything that anyone has said, and I think there are common themes that have gone throughout everything that has been said. There is one thing though that kind of rubs me the wrong way, and it is when there's a tone when older people talk about problems today and talk about the expressions of life, by younger people. And it comes across when people, talk about hip hop or talk about the crime rates, talk about how the parents on the corner used to, pull a kid on the street. It comes across as if back in you spoke about what was happening in 68 in street corner storefronts. It is almost as if in 1966, the same things were going on. I mean, the same kind of activism, and that, it's only now that there are more people hustling on the street than are active, in any organization. And I would really want to know if there was ever a time when there were more people, when most people were involved in the civil rights movement. you know, I would dare say and bet, and, you know, I've heard it from plenty of people, most people were not marching with King. Most people in 1968 to 1973, most black people were not part of the Black Panther Party. You know, they were not out there in the street organizing, doing the good work. There were many more people, you know, they were vastly outnumbered by people hustling, you know, having babies out of wedlock, you know, doing any number of things.
What are you getting at, though? You're saying that we have a misperception of the past. We've idealized.
I think there's a great degree, an incredible degree of romanticism of the past that makes it hard to really appreciate the opportunities in the present, and that make it really hard to be self-critical of the past. And I say that because, and you know, I don't consider myself a young person, you know, though I'm certainly a young person.
The youngest person on this
But you know, people talk about the golden age of hip hop,
right?
You know, and talk about that period that I remember when I was in high school. You know, in the late '80s, early '90s. You know, as the time when all hip hop was Afrocentric and everything was good and great. And that was purely that was a reality. It certainly wasn't the case that all of hip hop was the case. That was, you know, maybe 5 or 6 or 7 groups, you know, out of, you know, a much broader spectrum of groups that were out there. But it was a reflection of what was happening in the street. So there was protest music in the 60s that was a reflection of what was happening in the street. And Mos Def has, you know, put it very clearly, hip hop won't get better until the people get better. And that's very much the case, you know, with all expressions of life, all culture. You know,
I will
life's
say
an inner condition.
And I will say, because there's a couple of people, and we have to stop. I would hope that this generosity of spirit is with you in 25 years.
I hope it's
you will find an amazing thing happens. Amazing thing happens.
I want to add to what he's saying, and that is, I mean, I think the other part of what's missing here is that people become so frustrated they didn't want to find a place to put the blame, and it sounds like to me that people want to suggest that the blame is with young people. Let me just finish though. But what I think that is missing from that equation is that we also have a changing economy that changed the way that jobs existed within our communities, and people were able to make their lives work. And I think that that is something that's radically different for this generation of young people that's missed when the finger is pointed at hip-hop, or people are saying young people aren't doing this or young people aren't doing that.
We used to do very clearly, this is a damaged generation of parents taking care of children.
But who are the parents that they're talking about? They're talking about parents who grew up in the hip-hop generation.
Oh, okay. Hip-hop is, you've been victimized by us.
I don't want to reduce it to something so cynical and small. What I'm saying is that the underlying thing that's being said is that somehow there is a lack of values amongst young people. And what I'm saying is that a part of the shift in what is perceived as a lack of values has to do with the type of jobs that are being created and the ability of people to make their lives work. And as a result of those lack of jobs, this elevation of an underground economy and an escalation of paramilitary policing and an escalation of incarceration. And as a result of that, the values change. It's not just that young people are somehow mysteriously emerging without values. And that's just a point that I think that's what you're getting at. And at the same time, there are countless young people building grassroots activist organizations that are not even seen on the national radar.
Oh, no. I think they get a lot of press, don't you think?
No, I don't think they do.
I think everywhere I look, I see a green generation. Yeah. Everywhere I look, I see a hot new idea, having it fair, and what have you. But 20s, I remember when Generation X a few years ago? Now there's, what is it, X, Y, and Z? You know, so everybody gets their 15 minutes now. You know, but Akin. Yes.
Okay, my name is Akin Funk Buddha. A performance artist, teacher, collaborator. I want to share with you some prescriptions that have worked for me, and I think before I begin that, I want us all to remember that we shouldn't take anything anybody says in here personally. I think we need to get even more personal and take what we learn here out there. Having said all that, something happens with language through the generations. Even the word discipline can make somebody, shrivel, because depending on how you were brought up, discipline could be an oppressive thing to you. I am one of those people, So every time someone says discipline, but I find when I work with kids, I use other words. I say develop your focus, develop your balance. I just find other words. And I also find the kids respond to that better than discipline. Having said that, technology is developing rapidly. iPhones, iPods, iMacs, iRack, and, all these eyes. But what about the imagination, the intuition? Our instincts are being forgotten. And impact, yes. And I think that even culture, I don't even like the word culture, anymore. Because as a performing artist, when I'm booking a gig somewhere, depending, on the venue, if your thing is cultural, then no, we don't do that here, but the new word is world music. Oh, I do world music. Now I get the gig, So words are interesting. Culture is interesting. Even education originally meant to self-teach. That's another word that I used to despise and had to find a new understanding. Same thing with God. I used to think that God, I felt bad because I didn't believe in this God that they spoke of, a man sitting on a chair with a long beard. I used to think I was a bad person because I didn't relate to that. But when I used my intuition to access an internal energy that was beyond my comprehension, then I realized that I could debunk a lot of theories from cultural to educational by reinterpreting them. So I am doing innovations in urban expression and reinventing and reclaiming hip-hop because it's in its adolescency, and right now she or he is homeless and needs fathering and mothering.
I think we have to wrap it up and say that the others have been just like this. I couldn't say they're conclusive, but what there is a strong pulse of concern and commitment to the ideas. I actually do believe that I have been a radical and I'm a closet traditionalist. I believe language is important. I believe that there are rules that you have to learn. I believe that competition is good. I believe that there should be a meritocracy, that there is a scramble. I would like very much to have this discussion happen right now next to a group of people in Seoul, in China, in India. I do believe that there's a lot of expectations that the young people have that actually do come from a sense of entitlement in a culture. Even the underclasses have it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go read about the test scores right now in Seoul and in India, who are our competitors. I don't know if they're having the same discussion. So responsibility goes across the board, and I don't think there's anything wrong with tradition. And I do think that there are values that are enduring values. How they are taught, how they're expressed, maybe it's a language, what have you, but I do believe that they have a place. I thank you all very much for making this a rich evening and good night.
A couple of things. First of all, it was neglected to be mentioned at the beginning. There was a reception in the lobby immediately following where you can continue this discussion with Bill and the panelists. You can have something to drink and eat on top of that. And there are mailing lists in your programs. Please fill them out, hand them to the ushers or the Bill T. Jones staff on your way to the reception. 10 minutes into it, we're going to raffle off some tickets to the BAM premiere of Quarreling Pair, which is a magnificent piece, and the equally magnificent piece that was created for Harlem Stage by Bill, Chapel Chapter, which returns here in 1 year to finish its world tour as it began here, and some other prizes too. So thank you so much, all of you. Thank you, and see us downstairs.